Welcome to From a Southside Point of View. I'm here as always with Josh Nelson from Sox Machine. We're going to talk about Book of Boba Fett. Well, kind of. The Mandalorian episode of Book of Boba Fett. Episode 5. Or chapter 5, I should say. Josh, what'd you think, man? How'd you feel coming out of that episode?
So I've seen this episode 3 times now. And I have to say, I did not see that coming. My first reaction was 6 minutes into the episode, the intro scene, and just, this is amazing, right? Just like, and for those that are not well acquainted with us, maybe you found this channel randomly or this video randomly on YouTube. Chorizy and I are from Chicago. Chicago, shockingly, is a very corrupt city. And this scene reminds me of like 1970s Chicago, Chorizy, where you have this guy walking into one of the many freezers that used to be in the neighborhood now known as Fulton Market, which is not filled with freezers anymore. It's filled with a bunch of restaurants and the McDonald's headquarters and very expensive condos now. But it reminds me of just walking into a meat freezer in 70s Chicago, demanding the head of somebody and just getting into a brawl in the meat freezer. And I absolutely love that scene. And then my next comment, 16 minutes into the episode, is, oh my God, this is amazing. This might be one of the best episodes that they've done, even including, the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. And it just progresses to get better and better and better. And it is a bit odd that you do not see Boba Fett at all in this chapter. However, I think there is a reason why you don't see Boba Fett, and we'll discuss in this episode.
Well, let's get into that. Let's just jump right into that. So we've got the full Din Djarin episode, and some people are not happy about this. I don't know why. I'll give you an example. Josh, I'm watching one of the channels that I love to watch for Star Wars content, which is Star Wars Explained. If you guys are watching, check them out. They're awesome. I think they're down in Atlanta. They're great couple of people that do this. But they have a live stream going right after the show, so probably about 6 p.m. And so they had on a guy from the Templin Institute, and he was and Templin Institute does also YouTube videos. They do things on governments and fictional governments and fictional companies and things like that from all these movies, video games, etc. And so I thought, oh, great, there's going to be some really good content here around Mandalore. And the guy was just kind of insufferable about this whole episode being just Din, to the point that Chorizy was just yelling at the screen, telling the guy to shut up. But really, the problem I had with it is a lot of his stuff was hey, what if you're someone who's not watched The Mandalorian and you're watching Boba Fett? And I'm like, what audience is this? Who is that person? Because they don't really exist. And then the other thing is I think the more the bigger complaint that I've seen is just that, why isn't Boba Fett in an episode of the Book of Boba Fett? And to that, I really want to know from people that, are when you watch Pulp Fiction and you get to the Bonnie situation, do you just turn it off? Do you just go oh, this doesn't seem to fit into the plot, I'm just going to get rid of one of the best parts of the movie? No, you don't. You watch it because you're looking at the whole film together. Look at this whole story together. Right. And then it's not that weird to say, okay, we got to catch up on this guy. So Josh, how'd you feel about it? Was it, I know it's a little off to see this, but I don't think this is weird for Star Wars even.
No. And I think what this episode does, the return of the Mandalorian, is demonstrate. So in the first 4 chapters of Boba Fett, we get present day and what happened after he gets out of the Sarlacc pit, and how the Tusken Raiders took him into their tribe. And we found out what happens to the Tusken Raiders even after the raiding the train scene and stealing of the spice and stealing the water car, that when Boba Fett goes speaking to the Pikes, that he gets double crossed, and the speeder gang takes out the Tusken Raiders with the help of the Pikes as a form of revenge. At least that's what I'm rolling with. We haven't visually gotten that confirmation, but that's what I'm assuming. And then Boba Fett once again is without a tribe. He is alone, and he is looking to build a new tribe. And he runs into Fennec Shand, and they are building something new. Din had a tribe. It was him and Grogu. They made friends along the way. And now we see him in this episode alone going after a bounty because he's trying to leverage this bounty to find his past friends, past Mandalorians, the armor. And he gets that information. He meets up with them, and we'll definitely break these scenes down. But ultimately, after his duel, when he reveals that he has taken his helmet off, he is shunned by the armor, and Din is now alone, and he is looking to meet up with Grogu. I don't think he's going to get the news that he wants to hear about Grogu's Jedi training. We already got some foreshadowing with the armor about that, and past Star Wars content about how Jedi during the training have to let go of all forms of attachment. But here Din's going to be alone. And maybe where you have these two Mandalorians searching for their place in this universe are going to find out that maybe together they can build a new tribe, because their past ways they may realize, or they maybe already have realized, is not the way.
I like that. And I agree. It's like you're really honing in on like we needed to see Din come this far, and you can't do that without using a full episode, right? Like you need to see that progression. And like my question to anyone who's watching or thinking about this is, would it have been better if they cut this up into 2 episodes and had half being Boba Fett, half this? Or would you rather just get caught up all at once? I thought like the continuity of it was awesome. Like you just got to see this whole progression in like 51 minutes. I thought it was great. You touched on the opening scene. I want to get into that a little bit. So I jokingly thought this when I saw it, I was like, man, that'd be funny. Like we're thinking of all these connections, and then it's like the Klatooinian dude that's like been on Boba's ass throughout that whole meeting. Like, yeah, didn't cut his brother's head off. That would be amazing. But I don't actually think that that's what happened. But I did love where you're going with that, with like the corrupt, like Fulton Market kind of 70s mob bit going on. Like, oh man, like in fact, there's a restaurant, I forget the name of it, on I think it's on Lake, which is in Fulton Market, and they have, it's like a butcher shop up front, and then you go through like the butcher, like those plastic doors, into like a nice big restaurant, which I thought was like always kind of a cool touch to the place. But yeah, I mean, like I love that thought of that. I think the one thing here that needs to, there's 2 major points about this process here. One is that he's going back to bounty hunting, right? Like he's going back and doing the only thing he knows, right? This is what he knows. He's going to just go do this, even if he's got to, chop people up and walk, I assume, since he doesn't have his own ship at this point, he's just walking around with a head for a while, which is weird. And then the other part is, him handling the Darksaber and not handling it very well. So Josh, what did you think about him kind of getting back into bounty hunting, and then the actual scene where he's trying to handle this Darksaber and just struggling with it?
Yeah, so getting back into bounty hunting, I think he's on a mission. And for this particular mission, yeah, he needs credits, right? he needs credits to go buy a new ship because he doesn't have a ship anymore. So that's one agenda. He's very good at bounty hunting, and he's got a well-known reputation in bounty hunting, so he can make a lot of credits. He's also looking for information, so if he can earn some credits while getting the information to find the Mandalorians that are hiding, he can do so on Halo. I call the planet Halo. They did a very good job in this episode creating Halo. I mean, that's what it reminds me of from the video game.
It's called something else. It's called man, it's not.
It's called Halo.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just stick with that. It's called like Glavis. I think it's Glavis. But okay. Yes, let's just call it Halo because no one will know what you're talking about if you say Glavis. Everyone will know what you're talking about if you say Halo.
Yeah. So they made Halo, which is cool. But I love that just because you have the Darksaber does not mean you can be great at wielding the Darksaber. Moff Gideon wasn't very effective with the Darksaber. That's why he gets beat by a Beskar spear against a Mandalorian. Din is struggling greatly with the Darksaber, burns himself in the leg. That was a really cool effect as far as the saber burn, and I'm glad that they did that. And even when in the duel, when Paz gets the Darksaber, much bigger than Din, struggles greatly using the Darksaber. And there is an element of the Force. You know, you're fighting against a blade. You should be fighting against your opponent. And the Armorer knows a lot more about Jedis that she has led on to believe, especially from season 1 of The Mandalorian. And so I'm a little curious about the Armorer because she knows a lot about the Jedi.
I've got a theory. Well, I'll get into it. I'll let you go, but I'm going to get into that theory.
So in future episodes, whether it's in the Book of Boba Fett or in Mandalorian season 3, while Grogu is getting Jedi training, I think Din needs saber training. And this harkens back to Star Wars Rebels when Sabine Wren had the Darksaber and she struggled greatly wielding the Darksaber until she started training with a couple of Jedis to be more efficient with the Darksaber and have a better understanding of the weapon that you wield and how you should be using this weapon in battle so you don't struggle as much. So I'm kind of curious if we are going to see saber training for Din and who is his saber partner or trainer. It could be Ahsoka. Knowing that Ahsoka's getting her own show, I have another theory about Ahsoka Tano in a moment, but I think that'd be pretty cool as well. But it is very clear that Din needs some saber training so he doesn't burn himself again or cut his leg off. And by the way, we make fun of soccer players all the time, and all they need is just a little spray in their legs and they're back up and running on the pitch again. Soccer spray is legit. I did not know this until this episode, Chorizy, but soccer spray is legit.
It's funny because like I remember being a kid and like you'd get hit with a baseball or something and they'd put the cold spray on you. I didn't realize how good that cold spray was. They put it on a absolutely charred leg, and the next thing you know, he's up and about, no problem. But honestly, like Josh, I think $1 million idea here. We get a hangover cure and we name it the Back to Tank.
Just spray it on your forehead.
You just dunk your head into the Back to Tank, and you hangover gone. It'll be mostly ice and crystal meth in there to get you all right.
It'd just be like instead of giving an IV pouch, it's just a tank filled with IV fluid that they just dunk you in. Oh,
so,
man. Okay.
So you touched on a couple things there, and I want to just kind of put a little more color to them, and one of which is the kind of fighting against the saber and the training that Kanan Jarrus gave Sabine Wren when she had the Darksaber. Now, this is something that's, you know, a lot of things you think about when you think about the Jedi, right? Is like kind of like samurai training and things like that, and just like having a connection between your mind and the blade, right? And that's really what you're going for here. And I think that that's where uh, Din's lost, Paz is lost. They're not connecting those things. And Sabine, when she started to realize that she can use her thoughts to connect to the blade and then use it, she got awesome at it. And she got awesome at it fast.
Mhm.
So like I could see a quick turnaround on one of these wielders. We're gonna get to that much later, who we think is going to end up with the Darksaber at the very end. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But one other thing that you touched on, and we're going to jump into the next scene here, which is the armorer and her weird superstitions. But there's a thought that I've had about the armorer since we kind of first got introduced to her and got a little bit more information and kind of look back at the Clone Wars a little bit. I think this might be Rook cast. So
Okay.
if you don't remember, so Death Watch, Rook cast is one of them, and they're in the tunnels with Maul towards the end of Clone Wars. And she's in the tunnels now. She seems to have taken to that life, but they were previously cast off on the moon, Concordia. That's where they were. So she brings that back up, and we'll get into the Siege of Mandalore in a minute. But I kind of feel like that's who this might be, because the amount she knows about the saber, the amount she knows about Jedi, and her outlook on Jedi. This is all information that someone close to Darth Maul would know, but maybe not your average kind of Mandalorian, right? I don't think that the Jedi were really kind of talked about, because it's kind of something you'd want to suppress in that society. They don't care for the Jedi much. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But one thing we need to talk about is like all of the lore and legends that she's putting forward in this episode, and kind of, where that leaves us, right? Like she's kind of manipulating Din here, and let me get into a couple things that I found troubling. So one, she tells Din that Tar Vizsla was both a Jedi and a Mandalorian. However, when Din talks about Grogu, it does not seem like she's open to that idea. Like, you sent him off to the Jedi, he's gone now. He's gonna detach himself from you.
Yeah.
Just deal with that. The other thing is, while this conversation's going on, she tells him that the spear can't exist, right? It's a weapon. You're not supposed to make weapons out of this. I love that they made the little comical scene of him getting on the commercial liner just so they could remind you, as he pours the whistling birds out of his armor, that she literally made him Beskar weapons like last season. So I don't think, or maybe 2 seasons ago, whenever it was. But I really don't, you start to see these things that are just like kind of flawed, right? She talks about loyalty and family and things like that. But then it's impossible for Din to have taken off his helmet, even though what he was doing was saving his family, right? Like, there's all these contradictions in what she talks about. And I think that as she gives the Darksaber legend, more and more flaws start to come out. What did you think about the Darksaber legend and just kind of like all of her lore?
So your theory that she is Rookcast, I think, is spot on, because I want to talk about the story of the Darksaber and what happened when Din asked about Bo-Katan and on how her mighty house fell, lost the way, and then you have the Night of 1,000 Tears, the Great
Yeah.
Purge. There was a clue that the armorer dropped that if it wasn't for us being on the moon of Concordia, we would have not survived the Great Purge. The moon of Concordia is when we first discovered Death Watch, because Death Watch was using the mines of Concordia as a secret base. So it totally makes sense that in the raid of Mandalore, which is at the end of Clone Wars, and you get that amazing duel between Ahsoka Tano and Darth Maul, and Bo-Katan takes over or retakes over the throne of Mandalore, it would make sense that Death Watch would flee to Concordia and hide there, still being close to home, because they would still have interest in undermining Bo-Katan to take over Mandalore. So it makes total sense that the armor is Rook Cast, a former member of Death Watch, going super religious with the Mandalorian way, never taking the helmet off. Whereas Bo-Katan is more freely taking helmets off and everything. The Night of 1,000 Tears. This has been referenced twice now because Moff Gideon also referenced this event to Din during Mandalorian. And we get more insight, and you get that flashback scene of the TIE bombers just nuking everything on Mandalore. I'm wondering if we get even more and more scenes of the Night of 1,000 Tears. This seems to be a very critical event that happens post Return of the Jedi. So I like on the way that she explained that story, and I liked a lot of the things that you are touching on, that she's not being very consistent. And that's a great example that you mentioned as far as the Beskar spear. Because Chorizy, I didn't even think about that when he was unloading the weapons, that he's got Beskar weapons that she
Yeah.
made. So that's a really good point. So what do you think then is her goal here with Din? Because she
I
ends
don't
up
think
kicking him out.
I don't think she wants Din to have the dark saber. I think that she feels it should be with the Vizsla lineage. So she's
Well, he
again
lost.
she's playing against her own thoughts here, like her own beliefs, like right, like it needs to be won in battle, but she really believes that it should be passed down in lineage, like she just said that shouldn't happen with Bo-Katan. Like I think there's just like a spewing of contradictions during this, and so I mean, like otherwise, you know, she wouldn't have pointed out all the flaws in his fighting style, but then not wanted to really teach him what's going on.
So,
So
okay.
so I
Yeah.
think that towards that, you know, she's like, okay, well, you want it, but now you need to leave then. Like,
You,
why
yeah.
wouldn't she take him in as like, okay, here's how we fix the helmet thing, and let's get past that because you're going to lead us. She definitely doesn't want him as their leader. She
Yeah.
wants him as a tool, which is why she never shows him how do you make this stuff. She never lets him make anything out of Beskar. Like it's just her. Everything requires dependence upon her,
Yeah.
and she wants them to be used as a tool. She knows she can use Paz Vizsla as a tool. Din is has grown too much for that, and so I think that that's where we start to see this is going to be a problem for her. So, hey, by the way, did you take your helmet off? Because I'm pretty sure you did. So get the hell out of here now.
So a situation where you may have won this in battle, but you are not deserving of it because you are no longer a Mandalorian. And now you must go to the mines and find the living waters beneath the mines in Mandalore, of a place that has maybe been turned into glass.
Okay, first of all, let's. Did anyone else think of Purple Rain when she tells him this? Because I absolutely first thing I thought of was Prince telling the girl that you need to purify yourself in Lake Minnetonka. Like that's the first thing that I thought of when she told him that you need to go to living waters and cleanse yourself or whatever. And I'm just like, what are you, Prince? What's going on here? But much like Prince, total BS. That like there's it's and I do want to mention something there though, Josh, because I'm going to keep coming back to this every episode that we watch. But why mention that there's living waters underneath the mines if we're not going to find some water underneath the mines on Tatooine? Like they're just building up my underground water source. They're just every episode they're giving me a little bit of a tease that there's a lot of water down there, and Din might be the guy to find it. Din might need to go down there, and I'm going to tell you in a little bit who I think is going to lead him there. But we'll get to that.
Okay, so I'm very interested in this theory, but clearly, with what the armorer said, I mean, this is the received path for Din. Obviously, after he meets Grogu, he wants to go to Mandalore and see if he can rectify the situation, because I still think there's a part of him that wants to be in this tribe of Mandalorians. Yeah. But if we are right and the armorer is Rook cast, if your theory is right and it is Rook cast, I don't know if Din really wants to be part of Death Watch.
No, and I don't think that that when you look at the Darksaber legend of, she's missing the point when she tells it, right? She talks about the undeserving who did not win it in battle. And really what she should be focusing on is the undeserving and not the whether it was won in battle or not, right? The superstition around it being won in battle is dumb. And it's dumb to say that what is possibly, as we look back at this, part of Operation Cinder and has nothing to do with anything, might be, just that. And she's blaming it on that Bo-Katan did not win this in battle. What she should be focusing on is who is deserving of wielding this, right? Because Maul certainly was not. And he certainly did not want to help the Mandalorians at all. He wanted to use them to draw in Obi-Wan and Anakin. Yes. Like that was his whole game, right? And so the fact that she thinks that he was deserving and then somehow Bo-Katan's not, solely based on the battle, is dumb. And so, and I don't feel like she doesn't truly believe that. I think she truly does. I just think it's not, it's like misguided. And so my thought is, if you're going to, look at this moving forward, I don't think someone has to win it in battle to be who ends up with the Darksaber, as long as it's someone deserving. And we'll see who that ends up being. But Josh, one thing I know you wanted to get to, we were talking about the Siege of Mandalore. We're talking about the Darksaber legend. We're talking about the Mythosaur rising. By the way, I've seen this all over the internet and I love it. When she says that the Mythosaur only exists in legends, apparently, I did not catch this. Don't quote this as my thing. A lot of other people put this out there.
Totally quoting this as your thing. Got it.
Is apparently in a bunch of different shows and books and comics and things, that kind of line directly precedes something coming out of Legends, Star Wars Legends, and into Star Wars canon. So maybe we see a Mythosaur. Maybe we do. I don't know. I think maybe it just ends up being a Rancor, but we'll see.
I was going to ask you if Boba Fett rides the Mythosaur.
Well, so that I think that might be what we end up seeing. We might end up seeing Boba Fett riding the Rancor with a Darksaber. That might be enough. That might be enough to fulfill prophecies. But let me pull this back in, and I want to bring something up that you mentioned. Before.
Got a great comment from Mailman Jack. Is the Mythosaur a Pokemon?
I think it's possibly if we have a little ball that turns into a many stories high dragon thing. So Josh, you mentioned this, and speaking of things that like kind of someone else tracked down, but let's talk about it. There's this Mandalorian proverb in the 2006 book Bloodlines, and then I would have never seen this. And this is in the captions of one of the earlier chapters. the same quote here, which is family is more than bloodline. And so let's talk about that in terms of Din, in terms of Mandalore.
Yeah. So when this came across my timeline, I thought it was amazing that people were able to piece this together. And it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show. Like, why is this a Din Djarin episode and not a Boba Fett episode in a show called The Book of Boba Fett? And again, continuing this theme that these are two Mandalorians that are looking for a tribe. Boba Fett's looking to build one, and he thinks he's going down the right path, being a crime lord or a daimyo in Tatooine to take over Jabba the Hutt and his territory. And Din thinks that he needs to live the letter of the law when it comes to the Mandalorian religion of the way, and maybe the Death Watch way, after having this conversation. But I love this quote because eventually in this multiverse that we're seeing from Star Wars, there's not a lot of true family going on. And even during the Skywalker saga, you know, they were the only family that we really saw was Anakin, Luke, Leia, right? Those are the only true bloodlines. But you would consider Han Solo part of that family. You would definitely consider Chewbacca part of that family. R2D2, C3PO, they're all part of this family. Like, tight-knit group of friends can be family to one another. And maybe this is where, you know, Boba Fett felt like the Tusken Raiders and this Tusken tribe was his new family. Because the only family he ever had was the cloner, his dad, and he got his head chopped off thanks to Samuel Jackson. And and maybe this is going to be the theme that in Act 3 of the Book of Boba Fett we come to a head here, is building this new family, in quotes I say, of this new tribe of all these individuals working together to a greater cause. And I still think the greater cause is taking over Mandalore. I don't know how they get there. I think that's the finish line still. That's my theory. I could be wrong. I think there's a lot of steps in between now and then. But now seeing this and seeing the caption, I think the breadcrumbs that we're seeing in this show so far through the chapters and why we get this Din episode is kind of leading to we're going to see this new tribe come together, and maybe it's Boba Fett that leads it, even though Din is a pretty big part of it.
I absolutely love that idea. Like I really, it does feel like they're building towards this. Like I think that's kind of the momentum of this episode. I have a slightly different take though, Josh, on them going.
See, when you say slightly different, this is going to be totally different and outrageous, and I can't wait.
It's kind of so, and we're going to have to go into the MCU for just a second.
Okay.
So I think we should realize that Mandalore is not a place, never was, and Tatooine could be Mandalore for them. So meaning, like, obviously Mandalore does exist. We've had stories there. We've seen it, you know, it's not like a mythical place, but it's not so much about, you know, back to this. It's not about the planet itself. It's about the people that inhabit it. And that's what makes it Mandalore. And, you know, I don't know what it's going to take to kind of break this line. Like, is there a mythosaur on Tatooine? That'd be awesome. Which, you know, maybe you find that in the mines. But I think what could be important here is, so Tatooine's been an important planet throughout the history of this of Star Wars. They're all going to be there. They're going to be coming together to fight off the Pikes, and then that becomes their place. But could this be where the last stand is against Thrawn, against the Chiss Ascendancy? They're still on the outer rim. So it's not like it's like way out of the way that they couldn't possibly say, okay, people from Wild Space and from the Chaos are coming to invade. They're not going to go directly into like the mid-rim, so they're going to fight out there. So I think that this could be a place where all of these people come together as the last stand against Thrawn, against the Chiss. So that's kind of where my mind went. But I agree, it could be that they go back to Mandalore and go to the mines and find a mythosaur and like all these different things. But either way, like there's going to be a new tribe here, and I think that that's something that we're going to see at the end of this season. Like I think that's coming soon. Let's go to this though, because I want to talk about what the armorer made Grogu. So I think the thing I've seen the most is chainmail. So I'm giving that -500, right? Like, okay. So you gotta bet 500 to win 100, because I think kind of everyone is feeling that one. And I could, it'd be cool, like a little chainmail, headdress for Grogs. I think he'd look good in that. This is my pick, and that's why I'm giving it +100 odds only. It's even money. Is those links are really just like a kind of like almost a reverse backpack, but the chest plate being with the Mudhorn sigil on it. So that's where I was going. Could be a necklace with the Mudhorn, but they made a big deal about it being armor, so I don't think that's the case. Necklace with the ball from the Razor Crest. I kind of think that would be like kind of the sweetest gift ever, but like I don't think that's going to happen. Bunch of Beskar earrings. So I'm thinking like line his ears with earrings. It would look awesome, and it's kind of going to protect those ears. You don't want Kylo Ren chopping those ears off. So I think that that's a possibility. And then the field, I'm only giving +250, because I mean, like, there is a million things that this could be. Josh, where's your money going?
It's going on the field. The necklace with the ball from the Razor Crest, I think we're going to see that ball, but that's going to be during Grogu's training. And let's say, again, we were shocked that this episode was so heavy on Din. No one was expecting this. We know that Dave Filoni wrote chapter 6, next week's episode. I don't even want to begin to try to guess, because I think I'm going to absolutely fail like we did last week when we were recapping chapter 4 and try to think what was going to happen in chapter 5. We didn't see this coming. I think that's going to happen again in chapter 6. We're going to be watching something that we had no clue was coming. But one idea that I like, the form of attachment, that's going to be Grogu's form of attachment. So every time you try to take it away, it could be a little comedic value. If Luke takes it away, or someone else that's training Grogu, which we'll probably get to that in a moment, of maybe another Jedi gets introduced, that Grogu keeps using the Force to take it back, and maybe you get a little hint of the dark side when he starts getting angry to keep taking his little toy away. I'm taking the field because I love the chest plate idea, but I think we're going to get a shoulder. I think we're going to get a little shoulder plate with the Mudhorn that is just like what Din is wearing.
That's the first thing Din gets, right? When he gets some Beskar, and then like I think that's from like the initial payment he gets, right? Like that's what becomes his shoulder. So I like that. I think that's an interesting one. So
it is small, right? He's got this small thing, but Grogu is very small as well. So
right. And wrapped perfectly. I just love the little ears. Good job. Good job, armor. You did something right in this episode. So I think that the next thing we've got to get into, though, is, he goes back to Tatooine to visit Peli, because he thinks she has a Razor Crest for him. So let's talk a little bit about the visit back to Peli and what they see and hear there. They hear there's some wild stuff that gets talked about.
Yeah.
And I love Amy Sedaris. Just fantastic job. I have to imagine almost all of that was ad-libbed with just some kind of direction. But yeah, I mean, like her talking about dating a Jawa was just it peak Amy Sedaris. I love it. And so,
Yes.
we get this scene though, right? And let's talk about it. So he comes back there. They introduce the BD unit, which is really cool. The Womp Rat comes through. They're bigger than Luke described them.
Yep.
But Mando comes in, shoots the Womp Rat. Great entrance. But now he's there to get a new Razor Crest, so he thinks. And then Peli kind of bait and switched him, and now what she's got is an N1 Starfighter, which we saw in the prequel movies. Not my favorite prequel movie, I'll tell you. Yeah, Episode 1, not great, but Anakin flew one. This is not Anakin's, I don't think, but we get introduced to that Starfighter. So, Josh, when he comes back, kind of what's your thoughts on this scene? I know I've seen some complaints about it being too long and drawn out and all this, because they have the whole rebuild of the ship. What were your thoughts on how that scene flowed and what we're getting there?
I don't understand why people complain about this, because if you love Star Wars, you are getting to the nitty gritty on how these starships are being built, which we don't really get a whole lot of details of unless you buy books. Like, we've never seen an X-Wing get built. We have no idea what goes into building an X-Wing. We have no idea what gets built into a TIE fighter. I have no idea how long the construction plan is to build a Star Destroyer. They just appear. They look awesome, so we love them. But if you're really nerdy about this stuff and you want to know the finer details, I love this scene. And it reminds me of, like, let's say, I don't know if this scene exists, because I'm going to drop a bomb on you. I have not seen a single Fast and the Furious movie. Have not.
Okay.
But I get the premise that it's not just about drag racing. It's all about building your ride. So I hearken to Din had this awesome Camaro. Camaro gets trashed. The mechanic that he would always go to says, "Hey, I found something to replace your Camaro," thinking, I'm going to get a new Camaro. But instead, you go into the garage and it's a 1967, as far as like a Corvette. Let's call it a Corvette. Stay with Chevy here. While you think in your head, oh, 67 Corvette, that's an awesome car. But it's not awesome. It's rusted. The paint has faded. There's no engine. You open the hood. Mice are living in it. And it's a piece of junk. But if you put some elbow grease into it, we find some, aftermarket or illegal parts. We can make this way better than the Camaro that you had. And I love this scene. And I love just the fine details they went into rebuilding this N1 Starfighter, and how everything was done by hand. It wasn't being built by droids. So the two of them had to work together, and the droids helped put pieces together, but they, with their hands, built it. And with his hands, Din has built himself a starfighter. Now, we've seen him rebuild a gunship because of the whole Jawa scene in Mandalorian season 1, where he had to build with his hands. And I didn't hear anyone complain about that scene being too long back in season 1 of The Mandalorian. But I absolutely love this scene. I can rewatch it all the time. And the test flight is some of the coolest special effects we have seen in Star Wars.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like I really enjoyed kind of every aspect of it. And when you have someone like Amy Sedaris counter to him in these scenes, you can have a lot more fun with those types of things. But I think, to me, there's some big metaphors here. There's some big kind of ideas that come with this scene. One of which, to me, is Peli is introducing him to just a gutted out, just kind of thrown away piece of trash. And while Boba Fett finds out that he is someone without his armor out in the desert, this is Din kind of getting to see that there's something underneath. You shouldn't care about the finished, like all the armored up bit. You got to be able to see beyond the armor. And I think that's what Peli's showing him. That's what he hasn't been able to do with his own people, with the armorer, with Paz. He only sees the armor. He only sees the violence, the fighting. He only sees that. And seeing the inside there is important. The other thing is, Peli is acting like the mother that Din needed, as opposed to the one that the armorer is, where the armorer is just making him dependent on her forever, right? Like, if you think about it in terms of our world right now, Din would be like a 45-year-old dude living at home. Mom does everything for him. Peli's there going, yeah, I can do this for you, but it'd be better if you do this with me, and you got to figure it out. So I think that's one of the things that's a theme in there. The other part is he's working with droids, which is kind of a hilarious difference from his earlier life. So he's learning a different level of trust now, and seeing through some of the flaws of his thinking. This could be paralleled later with Boba Fett having to work with a Jedi, or having to wield a lightsaber. Boba Fett cutting someone's head off with a lightsaber would be pretty interesting. And we get a cut in the head off at the very beginning of this episode with a lightsaber by Din. So there's some parallels that we need to think about here. But I think overall, I just love them building this thing out. And then like what it ended up with, I love the hollowed out droid port, because man, at some point Grogu's got to be in there.
Yep.
That's just like
Grogu's little pod.
But one thing, Josh, and this is getting back to my wild theories. We introduced the Jawas, and I know it's a weird thing to think about, Jawa lovemaking and all these things. But I think they're trying to give a little bit of personality to the Jawas, as so that they're not just like this scavenger type person. Like, they have some kind of feelings. They also like that they are not really afraid of the Pikes. They maybe should be, and maybe bad things will happen to them maybe later. And I think that's where this scene is making you feel like, okay, Peli is getting a connection to Mando. The Jawas are somehow connected to Mando. Are the Pikes just going to kill them and then set Mando off? That's a possibility. I think it's a little different. I think the Jawas are going to lead Mando to the water, or Boba Fett to the water. And the reason I think that is because I can't think of any other reason that the Jawas were by that tree that Boba Fett found. Like when he was all hopped up on lizard juice, like he finds a tree and there's like just a bunch of Jawas around it. Like, why? What is, why else would they be there? Jawas might have their own source of water, like, and only they know about it. And like, maybe this is where we get introduced to, here's how things are, this underneath the surface water source. But who knows? I could be really just going nuts here. I do love that the piece that the Jawa gave them is also in the original trilogy when they're in the trash compactor. I think it's in New Hope. Yeah, it was good to see like a little callback with that. But so he takes the plane out, right? Mm-hmm. Now he's basically going through a bunch of places we've seen before.
Tigers Canyon,
yeah. So what'd you think about that scene? What'd you think about him going up and then meeting up with Carson Teva and the guy who played Luke Skywalker? Like, good job on going like, hey, you know what? You did a good job being Luke Skywalker without the face. We'll let your face be in this episode. You get some face time.
First of all, I loved that they harken back to the pod racing, because in episode 1, Phantom Menace, that's one of my favorite scenes of that movie. I love the pod racing scenes in that movie. I enjoy the pod racing. And for the N1 just to weave through It's just awesome. And again, like back to my analogy, he crashed his Camaro. Now he's got a rebuilt 67 Corvette. You're not going 25 in a Corvette at all. You are going immediately to the highway and you're going to do like 80, 90 miles an hour. That car is built for speed, and for him to take it up out of planet was just awesome. I absolutely loved it. And that whole getting pulled over scene by the X-Wings, it's just fantastic. And, you know, harken back to Navarro, can he answer some questions and then boom, you know, just see the capabilities of the starfighter, because it is going to be important. Like, they're not just, you know, showing flash right now of all the special effects that we can do. I think there's a story element to this, that now he has an off the market, off the database ship that is incredibly fast, might be faster than any X-Wing and maybe any other starfighter that Din is going to be going up against. So now he has this advantage with this starship. And that's why, like with the Razor Crest is great if you're a bounty hunter and you're carrying crew or prisoners and such. I wonder through this starfighter if he's going to leave the bounty hunting ways behind.
It feels like it, right? It feels like, why? Like, this is not a useful ship for him if he's bounty hunting, unless you could just kind of hang those big blocks off the back and just fly with those, you know, kind of like towing some stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, it definitely signals towards a different lifestyle for him. And I think one of the other things too is at the beginning of that scene is he wants to run a diagnostic. Peli says, "No, I can hear it. It's fine." The trust there is something that's important. Like, if you look back at the beginning of the series, there's no way he's going to take that up in the air. He's going to be very suspect of her saying anything about like that, and just trusting her. Different guy. He's becoming a different guy. And I think that's why the show was 50 minutes or whatever it was. And that's why you saw it all at once. That's why the scene was long with him and Peli, is because you got to watch this guy progress. It's not a Rocky IV montage, because that's a ridiculous way to do this. It's a ridiculous way to do Rocky IV. But so, I mean, like, that's what I'm, you know, you need to see this progression. We got episodes of it with Boba Fett. We got one with Din to see this change. And so, Josh, I got to ask, you know, what's next? We're going to see, yeah, he says he's going to go see a little friend.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hope that that's not some misdirection, man. I will be so pissed if that's a misdirection. But I think he's going to go try and see Grogu. Well, how do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, I do think we're going to get Grogu next episode. And we're going to get Grogu doing some Jedi training, which, who is training Grogu? Are we going back to the Luke Skywalker CGI? Or is Jon Favreau going to drop the bomb on us and say, oh, by the way, without any of you a-holes finding out and anything being leaked, we did cast Luke Skywalker. And this is the actor who is playing Luke Skywalker. Hopefully it's Sebastian Stan. But, you know, maybe that's the case. Or back to Tatooine, back in the garage. We saw a BD droid, Chorizy.
Wow.
Any possibilities we can get Cal Kestis?
You know, it could be. I mean, that would make sense. The only other Jedi I could think that might be training with Luke at this point is probably too young to be training Grogu, which would be Jason Syndulla, or Syndulla, sorry. So yeah, who else could it be? It could be Cal, or it could be Luke. Maybe, I don't know who's else alive. Is Quinlan Vos alive? Maybe. But would he have hooked up with Luke? I doubt it. I don't think they'd get along. So
I think we're going to have Dave and John introduce the idea, because a lot of people want these two to retcon the episode 7 through 9. I think one way you can start putting those movies into question is if you have Ahsoka assisting Luke in training Grogu. I am just making a wild ass guess here because, again, I did not expect to see what we saw in chapter 5, and I am thrilled that we did. My guess, and this is purely a guess, we're going to see some Grogu fan service. We're going to see Ahsoka. And when Ahsoka is asking Din what's up and that he's got a job and he's going to be working with Boba Fett, that he's got some problem with the Pikes, I am hoping that turns on a light bulb. And I'm hoping my theory is right, that Ahsoka, through her investigation, is finding out that the Pikes are working with Grand Admiral Thrawn. And that maybe Ahsoka will lend her help with the Pikes, because she's dealt with the Pikes before, and she knows how incredibly dangerous the Pikes can be. If she lends her assistance to Din, and we get Ahsoka Tano also helping Fennec Shand and Boba Fett in what is to come against their battle with the Pikes.
I love that, because that's going to make Boba Fett kind of reach that point where he has to say, okay, I'm willing to let this person help me, which I don't think he would be very willing to. I think we discussed this last time when we were saying who's going to show up, and I was like, no way it's going to be Ahsoka, because he's going to go F that. I don't want any Jedi, even though she's not technically a Jedi.
Right. And you're going to get that line again. I'm not a Jedi.
Yeah. I mean, like his dad, for better word or missing. So like
Better for
Django
worse,
got his
he's
head,
not going to believe. Yeah. Ahsoka.
Django got his head cut off with a lightsaber. Like, that doesn't make that any different, right? Like, I think he has an aversion to the weapon. So I don't know. I think I like that idea. I have no idea what's going to happen in this episode, because if you're Din, I don't think you want Grogu learning a strict dogma like you were brought up on. Like, I think that might be where his head's at this point, of like, I don't like that, there's all this bull that I got to wear a helmet all the time, and that, the Darksaber needs to be won through battle, and all of these different rules. And I don't like the rules that you have to get rid of attachment, because we're part of a tribe. And the reason I let you go was because I felt like you were going to be with your people, but your people got it wrong too. And so, like, I could see him trying to take him back, but I don't know how that works in this scenario, because you're going to take him back to go fight in a war. Like, so I think you could be very right here that someone else comes back with him.
But your theory, though, okay, let's say he gets pushed back from Luke Skywalker. You are planting the seed of why you and so many people like The Last Jedi, of what Luke Skywalker becomes and the mistake.
Yeah.
That interaction is a very smart interaction to plant the seed. And maybe that seed, you get this cutaway shot of Luke Skywalker, like, suggest with the facial expression that maybe Din is right about the Jedi, but still continues to walk away if Grogu does go back into the care of Din and doesn't continue the Jedi training. That at least plants the seed inside Luke that comes to fruition in The Last Jedi on how he feels about the Jedi Order and how it must end.
Yeah.
I think that is a scene that could possibly make a movie that's already been shot better. And I don't think Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are in the retconning business when it comes to the 3 movies. But I think that because this is before the timeline, there could be things that they can tell in a story that could enhance the story and perhaps make the later 3 better. Clone Wars and Rebels made, especially episode 3 of the Star Wars movie, better. That movie has definitely aged a lot better if you watch all of Clone Wars and all of Rebels. So I really like this interaction, and And I'm hoping that does happen. We get that type of interaction. If it's not in the Book of Boba Fett, maybe it's in season 3 of The Mandalorian. But another thing that just crossed my mind, we mentioned Ahsoka. I would like to see Bo-Katan before the end of Book of Boba Fett because she still needs resources. And maybe they can chat about the mines of Mandalore and the living waters. And maybe Bo-Katan will continue to tell Din that's all religious BS. Or if you see Ahsoka, do we get introduced to Sabine Wren? And if we get because it's been casted, and if you get introduced to Sabine and Sabine sees that Darksaber, we can get a little bit more information, a little bit more knowledge and history, especially for those that did not watch Star Wars Rebels, between Sabine and Din. And then Din's going to see, he's very monochromatic. I mean, he's chrome dome. Sabine is not chrome. She is not chrome. So these are some wishful casting, but as we learned through chapter 5, John and Dave, and I mean, no one even knew that Bryce Dallas Howard was directing an episode, which, by the way, bravo, Bryce. You crushed this episode. Awesome. You deserve a Star Wars movie. I don't know.
Is that going to happen? I feel like I feel like either that's going to happen or she's going to get a show. Like her doing the Bo-Katan show could be absolutely amazing. So like,
or she gets episodes in Ahsoka.
Yeah, or doing a bunch of Ahsoka work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or I mean, we tossed the idea that we're going to get this multiverse movie, right? Avengers style movie. Maybe she'll be tabbed to be the director of it. I mean, she's done a very good job. Yeah, I like the Sabine theory there. That would be very interesting to see. And it could be that they're just crossing paths because they found out there's Jedi wherever they're at. I hope they're on Tatooine, just so it's a quick trip. But I think it could be that Sabine and Ahsoka are looking for Ezra. They're looking for Thrawn. They find out there's some Jedi. They go visit them. Good timing and coincidence.
And Din just shows up too.
Fate.
That'd be great. So last thing I want to do here is, because if we're predicting stuff to happen in the end here, I want odds on who wields the Darksaber at the end of this season. So who will have it in their possession at the end of the season? I have Din Djarin at -500 because he currently has it. So if nothing happens to it, he's in there. I have Boba Fett at -200 because it feels like him on top of the Rancor to end the season would be amazing, and only more amazing with the Darksaber in hand. I have Grogu.
Okay.
Now here's where I think this could happen is if he's training with the Jedi, let's say he's training with Luke, and Luke's like, you can't take Grogu, and Din is not a guy who likes to hear no. If he pulls the Darksaber out to fight Luke, I could see Grogu like force pulling it from his hand and taking it.
Yeah.
And that might be the last we see of it, meaning that he would end the season with it. You just mentioned Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan could come back in some way. She could get her hands on it during the battle, which I think she might be fine with. I don't know. We'll see how that works. Or probably your pick again, the field. The field's at +5,000 though, because like that's a lot of people that would not have to get it. I think this is possibly an Ahsoka bet, but like I think she's already got enough lightsabers.
All right, I'm splitting my bet in two.
Okay,
I'm splitting my bet with Din. I'm gonna split my bet with the field.
All right.
Here's the bombshell. Din loses the Darksaber. Maybe in a fight with the Pikes. Can't find it. Final scene of the Book of Boba Fett is Grand Admiral Thrawn with a Darksaber.
Oh,
being given to him. And then we lose our collective minds and demand that Ahsoka gets released early.
I absolutely love that. That's a great idea and a great place to end this one. As we've talked about this episode for about 15 minutes more than what the episode actually ran.
That's how
So
you
I think
know
we
it was
should.
good. That's how you know the
It was
episode was
awesome.
good.
I absolutely loved it, and I cannot wait until Wednesday to see the next one. In the meantime, I will be watching some Rebels and probably Peacemaker too, just out of different universe. But man, that show. All right, well, Josh, thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you soon, and everybody, thanks for joining in. A lot of fun today, and we'll see you.
Bye.